Hello everyone. In this video, we are going to look at the basics of code structure. Let's create a processing and write our first program in the object module. The code in the object module is executed when we create an instance of the processing. That is, actually, when we start the processing. Let's write our first code that will display the message, "Hello World." To do this, we need the message procedure, which takes the message to be printed as its first parameter. Let's look at the description of this procedure in the help. To do this, let's stand on it with the cursor and press Ctrl F1. In the window that opens, select the second line Global Context. As we can see, the procedure accepts two parameters. The first one is required. It is the message we want to output. The second optional parameter is the status of the message, which affects the icon displayed in the message window. Also pay attention to the semicolon at the end. All code consists of statements, and each statement that we give to the program for execution is separated by a semicolon. This is mandatory, otherwise 1C will display an error when trying to run such code. But the last statement does not need a semicolon. Since we have only one line of code in the program, we may not put a semicolon, but I strongly recommend that you always put a semicolon. This will save you from potential errors in the future if you want to add something afterwards. Before launching the processing, let's create an empty form. Otherwise, the processing will not run in user mode. Great. Now let's launch our processing. As you can see, our program worked and we got the message we wanted. Let's go back to designer mode and talk about the difference between procedures and functions. Procedures and functions are separate pieces of code that are executed only when we call them. For example, let's write our own procedure and call it print. To do this, you must first write the keyword procedure, followed by a space and the name. After that, you must put two parentheses. At the end of the procedure, we should write the keyword end procedure, which indicates the end of the procedure code block. Between these two lines of code, we can write any code of our own, and it will be executed when we call this procedure. Let's display one more message. If we run the processing now, we won't see our second message because we haven't called our procedure. To do this, we need to write its name and put two parentheses at the end. The parentheses in this case mean that we are launching our procedure. Be sure to put a semicolon at the end. Let's run the program and make sure that everything works. Oops, we have an error. We have learned another feature of 1C. Procedures and functions must be written before the lines of code execution. That is, procedures and functions come first, and then the code that calls them. Let's run our program again. Great, now we see two messages. Before we talk about functions, I would like to talk about variables. Variables are areas of memory in a computer where we can store our own data. And a variable name is a convenient form of addressing this memory location. For example, let's create a text variable and put our first message, "Hello World," in it. And when calling the procedure, we'll substitute our variable for the text. Let's run the procedure and check it. Everything works fine, nothing complicated. And now about functions. The difference between procedures and functions is that the latter return values. Let's create a function, getText, which will return the text hello world and assign the value to our variable. First, we write the keyword function, then the name of our function, then parentheses again. At the end, you should write end procedure. To return a value, we need to write the return keyword followed by the value we are returning. Let's first create a message variable and assign a value to it, and then return the value of this variable from our new function using return. Notice that we have a variable named message, and we have a procedure with the same name. 1C realizes that these are two different entities because there are no parentheses after the variable name. As I said, parentheses mean calling a certain procedure or function. A variable cannot be called. Let's test our new function by launching the enterprise mode. Excellent. The last thing I want to tell you about is comments. Comments are just a line in the code that does not affect the execution of the program. In 1C, comments are single line and start with a double slash. For example, in a procedure, we will create a comment, our code. The syntax helper immediately shows us this line in green, thus warning us that this line is a comment. And that's all for now. See you again. Bye-bye.